You're listening to the Vacation Rental Success Podcast, the longest running podcast in the short-term rental industry with over 1.5 million downloads, and your source for all the information you need to master your rental business. Over the next few episodes in March, we are discussing the topic of artificial intelligence and its advantages and disadvantages for you and your business. But we need to recognize and thank our sponsor for this episode, Guesty. Guesty is a game-changing property management system giving hosts and managers the tools that they need to streamline operations, optimize bookings, and scale their business with confidence. Guesty is also leading the way with some of the most advanced AI tools to support your Guesty account that are evolving every day to help take the work out of your workflow. Listen into the mid-episode break for another frequently asked question answered about the Guesty platform, and check out the link in the description of this episode for a code to give you 50% off your first year with Guesty. And don't stress about the PMS switch. Guesty will handle all that by working with you to make the transition seamless. Now, let's get this AI-focused episode started. Here's your host, Heather Bayer.
This is the Vacation Rental Success Podcast, keeping you up to date with news, views, information and resources on this rapidly changing short-term rental business. I'm your host, Heather Bayer, and with 25 years of experience in this industry, I'm making sure you know what's hot, what's not, what's new, and what will help make your business a success. Welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Success Podcast. I'm your host, Heather Bayer, and as always, I'm delighted to be back with you once again. This episode is part of our special series on AI in short-term rentals, where we're speaking with industry experts about how they're using artificial intelligence to build more efficient, more guest-focused, and impactful businesses. We know how much AI is shaking things up in our vacation rental space, helping hosts and managers streamline their operations, helping improve marketing, and of course enhancing the guest experience. So today I am thrilled to welcome back Nihal Salah, a marketing expert who brings a wealth of knowledge on using AI to power up vacation rental marketing. We're going to go deep into practical use cases, how AI can help with everything from crafting a compelling property description to optimizing SEO to creating engaging content and personalizing guest communication and so much more. So if you've been wondering how AI can give your marketing strategy a boost, this is the episode for you. And without further ado, we'll jump right on in to my conversation with Nihal Salah. Back with me today is the wonderful Nihal Salah. So lovely to have you back, Nihal. We haven't talked for ages.
I know, it's great to be back. Thank you for having me again. And yes, we have not spoken for ages. I've missed you.
Well, we did have some attempts, didn't we? You know, we tried this and we had some real recording issues. So this episode that should have gone out weeks ago is a little bit delayed, but in fact it fits in so well with our AI themed month that it's perfect that it's going in where it is. So, you know, things happen, circumstances happen, and I don't think there's any such thing as coincidence. So let's say that all that recording rubbish that we went through was all for a purpose.
Yes, absolutely agree with you.
Okay, so on our AI theme, we are talking about AI in the short-term rental business, but because you are a marketing expert, we are going to really focus down on marketing and how AI supports different marketing disciplines and, you know, take it away. Let's start with what you think short-term rental leaders are perhaps missing out at the moment if they're not using AI across their marketing strategy and execution.
Well, I think they're just leaving money on the table for the simple reason that using AI effectively, and we'll talk about what effectively actually means, enables you to do two really important things. Number one, improve the quality of your marketing and the quantity of your marketing, but also to become a lot more efficient and to tap into expertise and knowledge that you might not necessarily have in-house, right? So when you start thinking about your average short-term vacation rental business, a small business that might have one person, if that, doing marketing, you might have one person who's wearing many hats, one of which might be marketing, they suddenly have access to a number of tools, which we'll talk about, that can help them massively improve everything from how they position and create their marketing messaging to the content that they're putting out on social media, and to do that in minutes rather than hours or days or even weeks like we used to. So I think every short-term vacation rental business should be using AI for their marketing. I think they need to be very thoughtful about how and what AI they start using.
I think I've been using the word intentional a lot while we've been doing these episodes. And I think everything we do with AI has to be intentional. And I say that because I have not been intentional. And a bit later on in our discussion, we're going to be talking about AI bloat. And I was having a discussion with somebody yesterday, and I said, I'm a flip-flopper. I will flip-flop from one platform to another platform without any real strategy for doing it. So I'm hoping that by the end of this discussion, my flip-flop nature will perhaps be brought in a little bit, and I can be a bit more focused. But I think that's, don't you think that's what a lot of people are experiencing right now, because there's so much out there?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the landscape is incredibly overwhelming. And if you just, go onto Google or maybe Perplexity and just type in the AI landscape, or just like you'd sent me, I think, a landscape map of just AI agents. And I looked at it and I was like, I don't even know where to start with this. It's so overwhelming. I do think that, the way I think about how to get started with any, if you're not using any AI, right? I think there is an element of just start, just try it out. Pick one tool like ChatGPT, OpenAI's ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, and just start using it. I think it's fine to flip-flop. And my strategy is always like 20 to 30% I flip-flop. And then, around 70%, I'm like, no, I'm really clear on, number one, what is the business problem that I'm trying to solve with this? Like, where are the biggest pain points in my business that I need to fix with something, right? And then you start looking at what are the specific use cases. So the pain point might be that you're just not able to get your property in front of enough eyeballs online, right? Because you do not have the marketing resource to do that. That is a genuine business problem, right? And then you start thinking about, okay, what are the most effective marketing channels or activities that I've found most effective in my business in the past? And then you narrow down and you think, actually, okay, social media worked really, really well for me. Then maybe let's focus on social media first. And then you have really specific use cases for the AI tools, rather than just feeling lost and overwhelmed and not sure where to start. And I think some people need that structure and framework, and actually the flip-flopping is not helpful for them. And I think other people like you and I think, we're designed to flip-flop. We'll always be flip-floppers, and that's fine. Because we're happy to experiment and just try stuff, right? So I think we're also quite early adopters of technology in general, right? So I think it really depends on the person. And some people are totally comfortable just diving in and trying different things and seeing what works for them.
Oh, you're already making me feel better about this. But she said, as I jumped into Perplexity this morning, deciding I was going to use that for one purpose, and then came back into ChatGPT, and then I was out into Cassidy.ai, which is one of my new favorite platforms, which I will talk about a little bit later on. We're talking about AI agents or AI assistants, and we'll come to that a bit later. But you just made a really good point about people jump into tools without identifying the key business challenges and use cases. So let me ask you about the different marketing disciplines there are. Let's break that out. and to talk about how AI supports those. So really going over to you to go through these different parts of the marketing landscape.
Okay, great. So I think like any function within any business, you have strategy and you have tactics and execution. And I think that's a really helpful way of kind of thinking about the different disciplines or the different ways you could be using AI across marketing. So you can use AI to help you come up with your brand strategy and your unique value proposition, which we talked about in a previous episode. We went into that into detail, but we also got into the specifics of how to use AI to come up with your unique value prop or UVP. AI is incredible as a strategic thought partner. I use it for this all the time. I use the voice mode. Remember, AI is multimodal, so use the mode that you're comfortable. If you want to type. If you want to, use the voice mode, use the voice mode. You can either ChatGPT in the paid version on the app. You can use the camera, right, and use video. It's incredible. So using it for strategy is fantastic. Linked to that, you can use it for targeting and segmentation. We did an episode on niche marketing and how do you start figuring out what niche to focus on, what guest profiles are best suited to your particular properties or property. So it's fantastic for taking data and analyzing that to help, like, for example, previous bookings, reviews, and so forth, to give you some insights into who are your happiest guests and what do they love most about your property, and to help you figure out where you should focus. So you can give it a lot of data. We could talk about that. Like most businesses are sitting on way more data than they realize and don't understand how valuable it is. But when you're combining AI and giving it all this data, magic happens. And we could talk about that. And then you've also got your positioning and messaging, which is, again, it kind of links to the targeting and segmentation piece. How do you want to position yourself to the target audience or the target niche that you're focused on? And then you go into the execution or the tactical side of things in terms of guest communication, content marketing and social media, even your SEO and website optimization to encourage more people to be booking, or your email marketing if you want to be coming up with automated email flows and so forth. So we can be using AI across every single one of those areas in the business. But again, it's about taking a step back and thinking, if I don't have a strategy at all, that's probably a good starting point because you need a marketing strategy. So don't start going into the detail of website optimization when you don't have a strategy, because the strategy will help you determine where you should focus. And if you're a small business and you don't have a lot of resource, you should not be trying to master every discipline of marketing. You really need to focus on what works best for your business and do that one thing really, really well, and then expand from there.
Okay, well, I want to take this hone down a little bit into some different areas and get some really practical use cases that people can use it for, because I know I listen to a lot of podcasts on AI and people talk about generalist stuff, and I come away thinking, this was really great conversation, but I haven't got anything I can just go back and actually do. So I want to make sure that those listeners who are with us at the moment are going to go away with something really practical that they can take away. So let's go through some of these, like content creation. That's what everybody thinks about when they think about marketing. You've got to create content. You've got to create blog posts, social media content, and then there's perhaps guest guides and writing property descriptions. Let's go through what those use cases are. We'll have all these in the show notes, so you don't have to take notes. You can go to the show notes and check these out. But I'm going to hand this over to Nihal to talk through the use cases for content creation and SEO.
Okay, super. I'll take maybe a couple from here because we've got 6 disciplines and we want to give practical examples across all of them, and then maybe we can include the detail that we don't cover in the show notes as well. Okay, right. So let's actually start with property descriptions and titles, because in a way that is content, right? The simplest thing you can do is let's refer to ChatGPT, because I think that's the tool that most people are familiar with, but you can also use Claude, you can use different chat bots or LLMs for any of these tasks, but we'll just talk about ChatGPT for the time being. You can simply take photos of your property or properties, and upload them to ChatGPT and give it a prompt and tell it what tone of voice you tend to use. If you don't know what tone of voice to use, you can also ask it to help you come up with a tone of voice. But you can upload those photos and you can ask it to come up with a property title and a description for your property. You can just give it a really basic prompt like that, but the more thought you give to a prompt, the better output. So like good input, good output. Lazy input, average output. There are tools that you can use to actually help you write the prompts as well. And when I've been in...
Exactly. That, and I've been doing that of late. I know that a prompt now, whereas a year ago, a prompt was, you just put in a sentence, help me write this job description. Not job description. I'm not out there looking for a job, but help me write this property description. And then you'd leave it at that and expect that the model was going to come in and just do it for you. But you've got to give it more information. But something I've been doing more and more, and Brooke Fouts talked about this in last week's episode. He said, ask the model to ask you questions if it doesn't have enough information from you to create a full response.
Absolutely. I think if you give it a detailed prompt and you ask it to, so what you could do is you could give it some insights around where your property is. You could tell it the type of people that you're trying to attract. So for example, if you're trying to attract multi-generational families, because you've got large properties where you've got lots of bedrooms and lots of bathrooms, and it's accessible but also child friendly, that's a great audience. So give it that context. You could also export all your reviews, upload them to ChatGPT and say, I want you to take into account all the great things that previous guests have said about the property. So there's so much you could input into ChatGPT rather than give me a title and a description. You could tell them who your competitors are, and you could just copy and paste a description from your competitor's website or an OTA, feed that in and say, I want you to make sure that this title and description really differentiates my property from the competition around me. So the more you give, the more context you give it, the better. And as you said, asking it to ask you questions is a really effective way of actually refining and getting more out of it. But also saying, take your time to think about this. It's interesting. There's research that's been done. And when you actually tell it to take its time, the model actually gives you a better output. So I think, that's just one really simple example. In terms of blog posts, if you have a blog and you find that is one of the effective ways of attracting traffic to your website, you could prompt it to give you, now it has the context from the property description and title that it's created. You could then also give it your website content, and you could give it your blog content, and you could give it the analytics of your blog content, because the data is really important. And you could say, I want you to analyze the blogs that performed best, and I want you to come up with ideas for 10 blogs that I could be writing to attract this target audience, because you fed it. That's why all the context is really important. And all this context is actually sitting in your marketing strategy. Giving it all this context, asking it to come up with ideas for blogs, and then you can ask it to come up with an outline, and then you can ask it to actually write the blog posts and make sure that they are SEO optimized. So optimized for keywords people would be searching for. You could even input, ideally, you also give it some kind of export from a keyword research tool that will give it the keywords with the search volume. I mean, there's just so much. You could spend ages just on the SEO-driven blog posts, right? One key thing, though, just I think is worth mentioning, especially when it comes to creating content like blog posts, is I wouldn't ask it just to go ahead and write 10 blog posts. I think it's really important to do it step by step and say, come up with the title. So it has 10 titles, and then you look through those, you know your property, you know your audience, you know what works, what doesn't. And then you say, right, we're going to focus on 1, 5, 7, and 8, for example. And I want you to add in 2 more about whatever topics. And then you ask it to do the outline, you assess the outline. Once you've given it feedback and you've done that back and forth, just like you would with, say you had a marketing assistant. And then you ask it to write the blog post for you. And that will ensure that the quality of what you get at the end of that process is up to your standards, basically, rather than just asking it to go ahead and write the blogs.
Yeah, I think when I listen to you talking about this, it really comes home that you do have to put work into this. It's not a matter of just a throwaway prompt, a quick line, and expecting it to come back with something amazing. It is, going back to that time-old phrase, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't give it quality information, if you don't train it well, and that I think this is coming out of all these other episodes that we've had, is that the models are already trained. They've already got all this information, worldwide information from all these different sources, but you as a user also have to train it to make sure that the response you get is fit for your purposes. That's your purposes and not somebody else's purposes. So a prompt now could be 40, 50 words. It could be 100 words. It could be 750 words. Just get everything into that prompt and then just let it run with it. I tend to do it now like it's a draft. I'm just writing a draft post as I would write it and then just leave it to fill in the blanks. And then it comes back to me and then I do more editing. So that's the way I'm using it. But anyway, okay, so we've talked about writing property descriptions and titles. We've talked about blog posts. I want to go, we're only on the first of our 6 key areas. And we've got more to talk about beyond that. So let's talk about data and analytics. How would you use AI to make some data-driven decisions in marketing terms?
Sure. So actually one quick thing worth mentioning on content before we move on, Heather, is one of the most powerful use cases of using AI is to repurpose content. So no one has enough time or enough people in their marketing team or even a marketing person. So if you have one blog post, you can give it a prompt to repurpose that into social media snippets, into website copy, into downloadable resources. There's all sorts of things that you could be doing. So when you have one piece of content, always ask AI, what else could we repurpose this into? Because it might not be obvious to you. So just ask it the question. So I just wanted to mention that because I think that's a really powerful use case that a lot of people don't always think of and could save tons of time and give you much more quality out and quantity of output.
Oh, and I'm going to add in something else.
Go on.
that we all know parts of, that we all know the responses where people take a response from AI and put it straight into LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, and you think your chat GPT is showing. Well, we learned this from Amber Hurdle, and it's just a timely reminder that when you're writing your prompt, you put in your prompt, do not use multiple emojis. Do not use the words dive or delve or evolve, and don't use or limit your use of compound sentences and limit your use of triples. And when I say triples, for me as a presenter, it was always the power of 3. You use the power of 3. You talk about 3 things, and if you look at most blog posts, you'll see they say, and oh God, I can't come up with an example. It could be turning blog posts into social media snippets, guest reviews, or other copy. So it's 3 things that you can do. Limit that. So that's my suggestion for the content part is to tell it what you don't want as well as what you do want.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you on that one. Okay, should we take one example from AI for data and analytics so we hopefully get through all 6 disciplines? So one of the areas that I just absolutely love using AI for in terms of like data and analytics is actually sentiment analysis. So what I mean by that, just taking a step back, is identifying the key areas where your previous guests have felt very positive about their stay, or potentially neutral or negative. So if you, again, export all of your reviews from whether they're on your website, on Google, on OTAs, gather them all into a spreadsheet or whatever. I mean, it's something you can just paste them directly in there, depending on how many you have, and ask it to do a sentiment analysis on your reviews. You can ask it to come up with, what are the key areas that guests love? What are key things of features of your property that guests love most? What do they love least? What did they really dislike? And what are they neutral about? Because that's an important one. And people don't talk about the neutral piece, because the reason I mention it, Heather, is because you can be spending a lot of time and money on trying to improve a particular area of your business that your guests actually don't really care about. So I think that's why it's actually quite important to look at the positive, the neutral, and the negative, and then figure out from there where you actually should be investing your time and what you need to be improving. But also you could then say to it, right, help me analyze the profile of the guests who are giving me the positive, the neutral, and the negative reviews. So you can feed it more information from your previous bookings. And then hopefully the timings then will overlap and it will figure out what reviews link to which booking. And it can then give you some insights into, right, this is the profile of guests that are actually best suited to your property. And this is the profile of guests that tend to leave the negative reviews or are not so happy with their stays. So that's just a really simple way of using AI from a data and analytics standpoint. And of course, the outputs of all of that will inform not just your marketing strategy, but your overall business strategy as well.
I'd want to jump in there because Mike and his family are down here with us in Alabama this week, and they've got a condo on the beach. And a shout out to Beach Getaways for providing us with this fabulous, really lovely condo overlooking the ocean. And we were down on the beach, and they've got a cart, a little wagon that they were able to, that's up in the condo. It's got chairs in it, it's got beach toys, they can load their towels in it and just take it down the elevator and onto the beach and haul it across the sand. Just one trip out. That's all they need to take themselves and their 2 kids down to the beach. It's not a huge thing in terms of investment, yet the reviews all show how people love that particular part. It's not other bells and whistles. People love this beach cart because it makes their lives easier while they're on vacation with a bunch of kids. So that's where sentiment analysis would come in. If you're not absolutely, as you have just said, what is it that people love about the place? That little line in a review that just said, oh, we love the beach cart, you probably might miss out or ignore that or pick up on something else they'd said. But if you did this sentiment analysis and it came up with, well, actually everybody's saying that this beach cart is the best thing ever, then maybe you would concentrate a little bit more and maybe think, oh, what could I add to my beach cart to make that experience even better? So I love that idea of being able to take all those reviews and find out what everybody is looking for and what are the types of people who are enjoying the property the most and enjoying the facilities and the features the most.
Yeah, and I love the idea of that beach cart. And I think that's something that's actually worth highlighting in the listing, right? Because it's actually saying our guests all love our beach cart, because it just means, and it's also really fun for kids, right?
Yeah.
I bet the kids absolutely love it. So it enables you to then also think about, what do I need to highlight in my marketing, like you were saying? I mean,
it would be a picture. It got me when I was thinking, I wonder if there's a picture on the listing that shows all this stuff piled up in this beach wagon. I love it.
We're going to take a short break to hear from David Angotti at Guesty to share how Guesty might be the solution to your property management system challenges.
So I'm back with David Angotti at Guesty. David, how can property managers seamlessly integrate tech solutions like smart locks or dynamic pricing into their operations?
You want to deal with a property management software like Guesty that does a couple of things. One, we have those native tools. We have Guesty Locks. We have Guesty Price Optimizer. We do technology really, really well. We're the biggest property management software in the world with almost 1,000 employees. So of course we have that stuff figured out. However, there's always a new technology that's appearing almost every single day. And that's where the marketplace comes in. And so you want to look at not just the native options that a property management software offers, but the marketplace, almost like the App Store is with iOS. Because Apple, as big as they are, still recognizes the need for these additional apps out there that can do one little facet of something better. And we're no better than Apple in that sense. So you really want the company that has the power to develop innovative core solutions, but also has the relationships that they can leverage on your behalf.
Perfect. Okay, we've got to move on. The third one's visual marketing. Tell us about how AI can enhance visual storytelling, because that is just so important.
Well, I mean, yeah, for this industry, the images and the videos are everything, because if they don't look good, then forget that booking coming in. One really simple way to use AI for this, and you don't necessarily, I mean, there are general tools which we can talk about like ChatGPT, but then there are very specific tools that you can use for things like virtual staging. So say that your property is still, not necessarily being built, but you've got work in progress. You can use certain AI tools just to stage the property the way you would like it to be staged. And then you have different sorts of photos that you could be uploading to your listings. But a really simple thing to do if you don't want to be spending money on any of the specialist tools is to simply take your existing listing images, upload those to ChatGPT or whatever tool, and ask it how you can improve them. Mm-hmm. I would also ask it to give me descriptions for those images as well. One of the things I always notice when I'm looking to book a short-term vacation rental is very few actually give thought to what they're calling the photo. It would be like living room, bedroom,
kitchen.
It's like kitchen. It's like I can see it's a kitchen. I can see it. But actually getting AI to give you descriptions for each photo is incredibly powerful, because don't forget that can also be used in the alt text for the image, which is great for SEO purposes as well, because you'll have, you always want to make sure that whenever you're writing any captions or titles for images or alt text, that you are making sure you've got the relevant keywords in there. So those are just some really simple ways of using AI for visual marketing. You could also really simply just ask it to come up with captions for social media posts, for example. So if you've got, a post and it's a carousel post on Instagram, you could upload those images and ask it to come up with a caption for those images that would describe it in a way that's appropriate for those social media platforms, because it's not necessarily going to be the same as what you would have on your website or OTA listing.
Those are some great ideas. Really good ideas. Okay, let's move on to guest communication, because people talk about this a lot for this industry. The use cases, automated guest communication, chatbots. I mean, chatbots now are becoming so sophisticated that, we've gone way beyond where we were 18 months, 2 years ago, where you could easily identify the responses as coming from a chatbot. This is not a real person. Now, in certain cases, it's getting really difficult to distinguish. Is this, am I talking to a real person? Because you answer a question, they immediately come back to you and give you that response. And it's what you're looking for. So let's talk about how AI can be used to enhance guest experience.
Sure. So there's a number of different use cases here. So everything from automating the guest communication via chatbots, I'll come back to that in a moment, coming up with those personalized email sequences based on guests' data. So if they've stayed with you before, their interests and so forth, welcome messages, check-in and property guide automation, post-stay follow-ups, which too many businesses in this industry do not do. And again, you're leaving money on the table. And even like looking at how you can automate loyalty program communications and so forth. But taking a step back, I think it's important to think about this in terms of when it comes to guest communication, You have the messaging or copywriting side of things, which obviously AI is immensely helpful for. And then you have the process and system side of things. So depending on what technology you already have, you might be able to get those email sequences, automated email sequences that are triggered based on how you program the triggers that might already exist in the property management system that you're using. And if you're not and you're using an email marketing tool, those will probably be all quite easy to build out. But let's just take one of these at a time. So we think about automated guest communications and chatbots. It's no longer now just chatbots that you can type your question and it types the answer. You can use tools like HeyGen, which we've talked about before, where you can actually create a video avatar. And that avatar could be either you, if you wanted it to be you, or you just choose one of their existing avatars. And you can you can train the chatbot, and instead of it being all, text-based messaging like most chatbots are, a video pops up of a person, an AI person, who will respond to all of your questions. And you obviously have to build in, you have to program it to give the right responses and so forth. But I think you're right. We're way past the point of those terrible chatbots that can't do anything useful, and you just get frustrated and say, I want to speak to an agent. I think we're past that, and now we're at the point where I work with clients that are using tools like HeyGen, using the video, and it's incredible what you can do with it. Because like I said, you can even create video of yourself.
Yeah.
And that becomes even more personalized. So that's one great way of coming up with a more personalized way of communicating with clients. If you're thinking about, or with guests rather, if you're thinking about how do I actually program it, well, you could always prompt ChatGPT to help you come up with how to program it, and it will give you the script, because what you want is to train it on specific questions and answers that are relevant to your specific property. So you need to make sure that you are training it properly, because the last thing you want is using a chatbot and it spits out the wrong answers to potential guests and you lose bookings as a result.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yes, I would just add to that when you're training it, make sure you are very specific about what you're training it on, and you're not asking it to go out to the web to find information that's relevant that would be irrelevant perhaps to your particular situation. So it's very important to say, you're trained on just this knowledge base that I am giving you, that would perhaps be your FAQs or information on the property and information on your company processes, rather than have it go out there and maybe, it could go out to Reddit. You never know where it's going to get information from. Not saying that Reddit doesn't produce some good information sometimes, but it's pretty random, and in terms of the quality that you're going to get back. So just be specific about what you're training it on.
Absolutely. And I think back to the point that you brought up earlier, I don't think we can emphasize this enough. You have to check the outputs of these tools, because they do still hallucinate and come up with the most random answers that are completely irrelevant and sometimes inappropriate. So it's really important just to make sure that you're looking at the outputs and you are testing any chatbots rigorously to make sure that they are not going to give any answers that don't make sense. But one thing you can do is go back and look at all of the questions you've ever received from prospective and previous guests and use those as input to training it, So like you were saying, FAQs, every single question you've ever been asked by guests, and even pulling up things that people have mentioned in reviews where they were confused about something. It could be something as simple as I couldn't access the parking lot. Things like that is that the detail here really matters. But what you can do is you can even use a tool like this across the journey of the guest, because you can be using something, using it on your website to answer questions that prospective or potential guests have and encourage them to book. You can be using it for existing guests if they have, they don't know where the ironing board is. It's a really simple thing. They get an immediate answer instead of having to email you or message you and wait until you read that and have time to respond to them. And then you can also use it to make sure that they have a smooth checkout experience. So you can think about using it across the life cycle of your guest potentially. So I mean, there's tons we can talk about under guest communication. I'm just really conscious of time. So do you want to go into another one or move on?
No, I'm enjoying this. We're going to cut this one. We're going to talk about SEO website optimization next, but we're going to come back on another episode and talk about the right tools. Because I think there's so much that we sort of discussed that we were going to include in this episode, and I think I don't want to have limited time for talking about the tools. So
Sure.
If that's all right with you, we'll go into a bit of a part 2 on this one and come back
Absolutely.
and do a separate episode on all the tools we can use, because I think I think we both want to be really comprehensive on that. So unless you've got anything more to say about guest communication and personalization, let's move on to SEO and website optimization.
Okay. One last thing I would say on guest communication is just looping back to the point I made about post-day follow-up. Again, I think you're leaving money on the table if you have not thought through a campaign for post-stay. The relationship with the guest should not end there. You should be sending them, and you can get AI to come up with a sequence. You can briefly actually just ask it to come up with a sequence of emails that would be sent out to guests, or messages, WhatsApp, whatever means you use to communicate with guests after the stay, to come up with several emails. But then it also should have, from the booking data, all of the key dates. They've come and it's a wedding anniversary, then next year when their wedding anniversary is going to be. So it's post-stay isn't just 2 emails saying thank you and here's a nice discount for if you decide to stay with us again. No, you need to stay top of mind and keep that communication ongoing with them. So use those key dates, use any data that you've collected to inform that post-stay follow-up strategy, essentially.
Yeah.
It should not be 1 or 2 emails. It should be more comprehensive than that.
That's really important. So thank you for adding that in. So just give us a few minutes on SEO and website optimization, and then we will have to wrap this one up.
Sure. So, where do we start? Right. Which one should we focus on? There's so much to cover, Heather. I mean, I could talk about this for hours and hours.
Let's talk about keyword research, because, it's something I go back 20 years with this, and the whole go back to the time of keyword stuffing, when you'd have those web pages that we used to talk about Ontario cottage rentals. So you need to come and visit us for your Ontario cottage rentals, because while you're staying in our Ontario cottage rental location, I remember doing that and just saying, how many times can I put Ontario cottage rentals? Because that was my keyword phrase, my keyword phrase. How many times can I get that into a page? Thankfully, those days are long gone. But let's talk about, how we use AI for keyword research now.
There's a lot that you can be doing. And I'm not an SEO specialist, but I think there's because you could do hours and hours just on this topic. So the way search is evolving is really interesting. Like when we just take a step back and think about what the point of keyword research and search engine optimization is, it's that when people search for keywords that are relevant to your business or properties, that your listings, your properties are what come up. And when you think about Google now, when you go on Google to search for anything, I don't know if listeners have noticed, but often you get that AI summary at the top. So a lot of people are also now using AI tools like Perplexity instead of Google. I use Perplexity probably 70% of the time now.
Me too.
If I want to, unless I want to buy a product, which by the way, you can still search for products via Perplexity, but I use Perplexity to search. But 70% of my searches I do via Perplexity. And I think more and more people are headed that way. So I think there's 2 sides to this. There's optimizing for, the traditional SEO, right? So you're thinking about what are the keywords, or not thinking about, you're looking at hopefully you've got Google Analytics or some kind of analytics where you can actually look at what are the organic keywords that you need to be focusing on, and you're doing your keyword research through, whether it's Google or other specialist tools that you're using, and making sure that you have those keywords in your website copy. If if you've got a blog post, and obviously like we talked about previously, making sure that you've got those relevant keywords in your blog titles and subheaders and so forth. Again, no keyword stuffing. Google punishes you for that now, obviously. Those days are long gone. But then there's also the other side of making sure that you are staying up to date with the changes, because the space is evolving so quickly, so that you're future-proofing yourself as well. So I think it's keeping an eye out for both of those key areas, really, when it comes to keyword research and SEO optimization. But a really simple thing you can do once you know the keywords that you want to, you've done the keyword research, or you've even asked AI to help you do the keyword research, if you haven't already done it, and then you can just simply upload your website copy, and you can literally just copy paste it if you really want to be lazy about it, and just say, I want you to edit this copy to make sure that it's keyword optimized for these specific keywords, and obviously do it in a way that adheres to the Google policies and so forth, so you're not getting penalized.
Yeah, that so much better than where we were all those years ago. The other thing is to do some research on your competitors in an area. Find ask the platform, ask the model to research other companies in the area. What are they using? What is successful for them? You're only restricted by your imagination on the sort of questions you can ask.
And you can even ask it what questions you should ask it if you wanted to get super meta about it.
Well, yes. I want to research the keywords that are going to be most impactful for my target audience, which is X. And I need to know what I should be looking for. And then, ask me questions. And I'm using that more and more these days. Ask me questions so that you can get enough information to give me a really good response. And yes, I mean, you might get 10 questions, you might get 20 questions. And then you sit there, you copy those questions, you paste them back into the chat, and then you just go through and answer them one by one, and then input it and see what it comes up with next. And what you're doing there is just refining and refining and refining.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think that's a really good approach. And I think it's also important to experiment with different ways of prompting and asking it to ask you questions and asking it to teach you stuff sometimes. And also, when you're stuck, AI is a great way of getting unstuck. Like sometimes when I have a problem, I do not know where to start with this. And that could be anything from like a sticky business problem to a very specific thing. Like I've had a horrible review and I don't know how to respond to this. Help me figure out a good response. So I think you need to think of it as a really clever assistant that you need to make sure that you onboard them properly, i.e. train them properly, and that you are communicating back and forth. It's not a one-way street, just telling them what to do. You need to make sure they understand the brief that you're giving them. And I think thinking of it that way is really helpful for people. So yeah, I mean, there's lots more we can talk about. Do you want to give a little teaser about the AI tools that we'll talk about in the next episode?
I think, you just mentioned it, this segue into what we'll talk about in the next episode, which will be about choosing the right AI tools and avoid getting yourself spread all over the place and flip-flopping like I tend to do. Then we're going to talk about what AI tools are actually worth paying for, because if you're not careful, you can spend a lot of money every month if you start subscribing to all these different paid platforms, because you just think, I'm going to get a little bit extra if I pay for it. Well, there are some platforms out there that will aggregate everything and at quite a low price point. So we're going to be talking about those free models, paid models, and we're also going to be talking about AI assistants. And just as you said, think about the person or the person, think about the model as being a very educated assistant and how you go about creating different assistants for different purposes. So that will be in our part 2. Can you think of anything else we're going to be adding to that, or should we just leave it as a big surprise for next time?
Let's leave it as a big surprise for next time.
Nihal, as ever, you have been so generous with your time, your knowledge, your expertise. Thank you so much. Can't wait for next time. We shall make that very, very soon.
Thank you, Heather. Always a pleasure chatting with you.
Well, that was an absolutely fantastic conversation with Nihal. Huge thanks to her for sharing so many actionable insights on how AI can transform your vacation rental marketing. I loved her point about being intentional with AI, using it as a strategic partner rather than just throwing prompts into ChatGPT and hoping for the best. And then there's the sentiment analysis idea. Brilliant! Because if you're not using AI to analyse guest reviews and uncover some hidden trends, you are leaving valuable insights and potentially bookings on the table. I always remember over the years Andrew McConnell from when he was with rented.com telling me this so many times. Really look at what you're leaving on the table, because if you don't examine all the things that you might be missing out on in terms of your operational management of your business or your marketing, your bottom line will be impacted. So this is just the beginning of our AI and short-term rentals series. Over the next few episodes, we're going to be speaking with more industry experts to uncover the best AI tools and strategies, recommendations for hosts and managers. And great news, Nihal will be back with us very soon for a follow-up episode where we're going to dive into the AI platforms that are actually worth using. You know, I just realised I used the word dive. Apparently we're not meant to be using dive anymore because that's what ChatGPT uses all the time. But hey, you know, I've been using that for a long time. So anyhow, we're going to be diving into a bunch of AI platforms because with so many tools out there, it's so easy to feel overwhelmed. And we'll be breaking down the best free and paid options to help you choose the right ones for your business, so you won't want to miss that one. Of course, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to check out the show notes for key takeaways and additional resources and anything else that we talked about. And as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Join us at vacationrentalformula.com, connect with us on social media, and let us know what you think. And of course, subscribe and leave us a great review. That would be really nice of you. So thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time for more insights on building a thriving, guest-focused, short-term rental business.
Before you go, don't forget to visit our sponsor, Guesty. They've been helping vacation rental managers stay ahead of the curve, and if you're looking for the right tech to streamline your operations, you know where to go. Check out the link in the description of this episode for a code to get 50% off your first year with Guesty, and don't stress about the PMS switch. Guesty will handle all that by working with you to make the transition seamless.
It's been a pleasure as ever being with you. If there's anything you'd like to comment on, then join the conversation on the show notes for the episode at vacationrentalformula.com. We'd love to hear from you, and I look forward to being with you again next week.